Solak, where do you stand on this Burrow Herbert thing?
I've been Herbert over Burrow since I think like Herbert started to take over the league. This, however, is the best Burrow has played. Better than any stretch he had during the Super Bowl season. The book on Burrow last year was if you give the guy single high, he'll rip you to shreds. I mean, Jamar and T. Higgins are too good. He's got too much trust, too much accuracy, too much quick process. And that if he gets a one-on-one matchup, man or zone on the outside, good night, take your ball home. You cannot do it against the Bengals. You gave them too high, they would struggle a little bit throwing the football. Still good, but they would struggle. And one of the roots of that struggle was that Burrow still tried to throw his one-on-one matchups. He still tried to throw outside against too high, tough thing to do. And the second thing is if he didn't like the look, he'd hold on to the football and he'd try to create. And that's where the lack of elite physical tools came in. He wasn't the best mover and he's not the best arm. He's a good mover with a decent arm, but he's not the best. And because of that, he took a lot of sacks. The offensive line was bad, early pressure, but he took a lot of sacks. One of the things that Bengals fans hoped and expected entering this season was that an improved offensive line would bring Burrow's sack rate down. But it didn't. Early in the season, Burrow's sack rate remained the same. In fact, it was jumping up relative to the amount of pressure he was receiving. And that's because sacks, like we like to say, sacks are a quarterback stat. Sack percentage, the likelihood of taking a sack, is generally predicted by how the quarterback chooses to play. Think Russell Wilson. If you choose just hold on to the football and screw around back there, you're going to get sacked a lot. You're going to make some throws, make some plays. You're going to get sacked a lot. Adam Harstad of I think Dynasty Football it is, writes about the three-legged stool of quarterbacking, which is throwaway percentage or yards per attempt, interception percentage, and sack percentage. One of the three is going to be big. You're going to take a lot of sacks, you're going to take a lot of interceptions, or you're going to throw the ball away a lot, or you're going to have like a low depth of target, right? Like that's everybody's play style kind of fits into those buckets. And Burrow's play style was a high sack quarterback. Over the last week and a month and a half, Burrow's not taking sacks. Ball's coming out quicker. He's checking down. He's scrambling a lot more than he was. It is very rare to see a quarterback change his stripes, to see play style change. That's one of the things that's been tough with Russ is he's still playing like he did when he was 24. He's not 24-year-old legs anymore. The fact that Burrow has kind of, had an awakening here and realized I can't take this many sacks and has just, boom, gotten them out of his game this quickly is extremely impressive, especially if it's sustainable. So this, like, Burrow's making up ground on Herbert because he's taking a huge wart out of his game. If that's sustainable, that's a huge deal for Cincinnati.
And I would also say, like, everything that Burrow gets credit for being good at, like reading defenses, being accurate, all of that. Justin Herbert's better at all that stuff. He's more accurate. He's better at processing. He's quicker at processing. He doesn't get sacked. He doesn't throw interceptions. He still pushes the ball downfield. Like Solak just talked about that three-legged stool idea. I wrote about that last year with Herbert. I mentioned it. He's like the only quarterback that doesn't have like a bad metric in one of those.
Is it bad? A-dot, but that's not.
He does fault. This year, but that's not his fault. Last year he did not when he had offensive line and weapons. But he's like, this is why we talk about him so much. And it's not just us. Like I went to Chargers training camp. I interviewed their coaches. They talk about him like we talk about him. Like their quarterback coach, Shane Day, called him the greatest quarterback ever after his second year. He says he has a file of clips that show why Justin Herbert's the best quarterback ever. Brandon Staley talks about him like he's a god. And you never hear NFL coaches talk about their players like that because they don't want to raise expectations. But Chargers coaches can't help themselves. And I don't blame them because when you turn on the film, every play is perfect. You saw it on Sunday night. Those were not ideal conditions. He was getting pressured within a second, and you wouldn't even notice it. He was just sliding away from the pressure, finding his check down, keeping his eyes downfield, throwing downfield. He plays quarterback better than I've ever seen a person play quarterback at this point in his career. He's not a playmaker. He's not a playmaker. Yeah. That's what separates him from the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomeses. He needs to live a little. He needs to let loose a little. He has the talent to do that. He doesn't do it. He's such a robot to a fault. But when it's not a bad play, when it's good to go through your progressions, no one's better than him at it.
Well, now he's got Mike Williams back. It's interesting. Their schedule is favorable the rest of the way. On FanDuel, they're 20-1 to win the AFC. The way you were talking about him was like when I was in high school, that John Elway, the first like 5-6 years of John Elway, where he was just so good. And it was almost like basketball, watching like a basketball player just put their team on their back and he would just win these playoff games he shouldn't and just clearly had the most talent. But I wonder, like, could Herbert, if he's as good as, the smart football community has been touting, Like, could it just be this random year where he just has a run like a basketball player would?
We got to get Herbert his Mike Shanahan, and Joe Lombardi ain't it. That's a big part of the issue, is that because Lombardi has a computer quarterback, like Steven says, like Herbert's just so incessantly correct all of the times, making the right read, making the right decisions at the right time. Lombardi does not feel the stress to improve his offense because Herbert makes it work. And that's just like, it's such a trap for the Chargers if they let the offense continue to play this way.